Sanibonani.
Hello. Hi.
Good morning, More. My name is Sifiso. My surname is Moyo. I'm born and brought up in Soweto. I'm actually an animal scientist. And I also became, later years of my life, I became a business incubator specialist. So I started with the University of Johannesburg, and one of my flagship projects that I've done is in Vilakazi Street. Actually, it was in Vilakazi Street. It was called the Box Shop, where we supported over 850 enterprises within that space. And therefore, that was the first investment that I've done in the township through my work that I've done with Citibank Foundation. Today, it's not quite an easy one for me, but I'll make sure that the message actually lands. I would like to talk about the township economics, and I've prepared a presentation that will actually give you a bit of what the township economy it potentially is, but what it could potentially be. But we cannot separate the township economy, the small Dorpi economy, and actually the rural economy, because all of those constitute to become the township economy. So my title, I'm a venture builder. That's what I actually am. That's what I've called myself. And venture building for me is within my DNA. My interest is to continuously support businesses to scale, but to also fully realize its full potential. And I've been doing that for the past 10 years now, since I've invested in Soweto. Now we've scaled to Vosloorus Township, and the interest is around precinct development. And all of those are informed by data. But for me, data is not numbers, it's primarily insights. So the insights that we have generated and gathered through available documents out there, they have helped us to be able to understand that in every township, there are pockets of spaces called precincts. And these precincts are basically destination for tourism activities. But for me, let me not get into the topic and talk about this narrative. So the narrative is around conflicting statements around what the township economy would potentially, that have been told in many times. In the other end, the township is a problem. No one wants to go into it because it has crime, it has all these things that are quite negatively attached to it. But that's not the true story. Today we are celebrating Trevor Noah that comes from Orlando East. We are celebrating Tyler that also comes from a township. So it means that township is full of resilient people that continuously break boundaries and begin to change and shape the narrative of South Africa. And there has been an amount attached to it, which is a 900 billion opportunity to be exploited. The question is, who's exploiting it and who's benefiting from it? Because those that exist in that environment, they have been exploiting it without understanding that it has a 900 billion potential. But for those that comes from the outside, and I've published a study, it's a white paper called the Township Jive. So the Township Jive is about two things. The word jive means in Tsotsital problem, right? And then in another term is dancing, right? We published it from the insider's perspective because we are all coming from the outside and we're looking into the township. But those that come from it needs to write about it. So I wrote about it and I tried to explore what this 900 billion is about. I undertook some kind of a research because I research also, I'm an author. And in that research, we kind of profiled about 800 SMEs in the food sector. On a monthly basis, those guys, only in Soweto, they generate about 126 million rand. We know with the SAB, they always talk about Soweto alone. In the festive season, they generate about 1 billion rand of sales in terms of alcohol beverages. So that 900 billion can actually be qualified there. But also, if you look at an important note, a small business district called Baragwana. Baragwana, we know it's the biggest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere. It is full of informal traders. They generate about 10 million rand a day. If you compound it, it's about 10 billion a year. And these guys, we call them informal. And that's the character of what the township economy is. We are trying to fix it, and others are trying to exploit it from an opportunity perspective. Like our president says, we are not leaving anyone behind. But the funny part is that we are leaving everyone behind. And we are coming in with an opportunity mindset, not with an empowerment mindset. And therefore, that's the reason why I wanted to talk about that narrative. We talk about townships. Soweto alone is made out of about 48 townships. It got guest houses, new hotels. I don't even want to talk about malls. There are many of them. But the irony of it is that all of those, we are not participating as township dwellers in that particular economy. It means that there's so much extraction, and the circulation of the rand that goes out, it only circulates about 3 times. So it means that that 900 billion that we're talking about, we are only getting a proportion of it. The rest of it goes out of the township. So in total, we've got 532 townships across the country, and we also include the rural economies and the rural communities that we talk about. But let's not talk about the data points, because we talk about intentional design, blended capital, deep ecosystem leveraging, and turning data into tangible impact. How do we actually do that? So I've spoken about what constitutes the township. I think you could read for yourself. I mean, these are definitions of collectively this makes up the township. Opportunities lies in those dense areas, because townships really have small spaces and small areas. So if we have to look at this development and its further development, there'll be no land for us to further develop it. Whether we are trying to build up, wide, in any form, because townships have been designed in a form to become migrant labor camps. And that narrative hasn't changed, because the composition of them still looks the same. So where do we have to look? Rural economies, because of communal land that could potentially be turned into a commercial opportunity. Small dorpies have always been the borders of townships. That's where entrepreneurs that operate in the township goes and get the goods that they need to sell. But the reality is that economy, it's a consumable economy. We consume. So that 900 billion that we talk about, it is not from a sector of manufacturing, nor any other sector. It is only now where we talk about the backyard real estate at the value of 10 billion, now it's at the value of 30 billion rand. But those are just informal businesses. So small dorpies have always been supporting the township economy in terms of the flow of goods. But if we have to talk about it from an economical standpoint, where manufacturing to take place, whether it's in a micro scale, in any other scale of it, it is not happening there. We are just consuming. And hence, I'm talking about exploring or exploiting that economy, because we come and bring and dump product there, but do we actually empower? That's the question. The policy game changers. So the township economy, out of any other economy, the nicest part is that it has an act. And that act is called the Township Economic Development Act. And it has key levers that I wanted to extract from that act. And hence, we are seeing popularities, interest in it, and investment flowing from government and private sector. And it is basically driven by this act that has come in. So this act looked at precincts. So with precincts, there's work that we are doing with Santam currently around consumer financial education through a coalition partner called Capello Communication, where we are actually going into precincts to understand the composition of enterprises that are there, so that insurance products that are developed actually talks to the market. We don't design things just. We have to design to solve real problems. Spaza and retail support, we've seen the drive of formalizing that sector and the 500 billion that is already available right now, but also the criteria doesn't match what we see on the ground. So the money hasn't really been deployed as it should be. There is prioritization of procurement. There's a recent mine called Westville that has just been actually open in the west side of Midlands in Soweto. And that mine basically, as it comes in, it needs to procure a proportion of its goods from township businesses. But the irony is that these guys are not ready. So we need an intermediary partner that will prepare these SMEs in a state of readiness so that they can be able to exploit and explore these opportunities. There's also infrastructure. These infrastructures that we are talking about also include similar projects, but mainly precincts and the development of precincts and enterprise zone, including internet, bandwidth, and connectivity. All those things are quite important. And therefore, those investments are accelerated by such policies. Intent, market, and interest. To date, we are seeing that there are about 2,500 online publications that have gone out about the township economy. They talk about either they are profiling a small enterprise or they are talking about it from a different perspective and the narrative that exists out there. About 140 academic papers have been published to date. So the Act was enacted in 2021 on the 27th or 29th of April, and it was signed into law. And therefore, that's why we're seeing it as this gold mine, as they speak about it, that it is a foreign gold mine. But for me, the perspective is not that. The township economy is part of the broader economy. It's just that we need to look at it in a different lens and begin to root it in the broader economy. It contributes significantly to the GDP of the country. These are the financial levers. We already know about them. You know, the Township Rural Economy Entrepreneurship a fund that has been made available, the Noto Fund, and that's why we are seeing the boom of real estate. When you travel to the township, you're now seeing amazing buildings looking like five-star hotels and B&B that are thriving there. It is because government, through the TEDA Act, they have made sure that they make funds available so that this economy can be accelerated. But we know in South Africa we are plagued by corruption. And hence, it is basically a stumbling block for us to fully realize the potential of the township economy. Here's a typical example, and it's a very simple example. In Soshanguve, ShopRite came, and it was generating about R1 million of sales per day. Look at how close ShopRites are within Soshanguve. So they've, instead of putting one, they've put about 4 of them. Meaning there are small districts and CBDs that have been created in the township. But the question and the contention point for me is that on those shelves where ShopRite is trading within the township, how much proportion of the goods are from consumers, are from township SMEs? They are non-existent. And hence we need the Act. Because the Act needs to protect and make sure that it benefits those that comes from those environments. From data to soul, partnership, patience will give us impact. If we collaborate with the right partners, and also we partner right, and we become patient with SMEs, we will be able to achieve the impact that we need. And I've been talking to the gentleman in the morning to say, in every investment that happens, we are betting on a jockey. As much as we can put the business case and talk about it, but if the jockey has a great business case, but it cannot deliver and achieve the impact, we are just playing. And therefore, we need to change and switch in how we think. We have to look at the jockey, and make sure that we bet on them. And I've been that jockey also. And a lot have betted on me. I've failed a couple of times. I've lost about 10 million rand of funds. And that hasn't deterred me. It actually has fueled me to continue driving the narrative. So, engine room, blended support in action For me, I've seen the power of mentorship because that's where the soul is. That's where we connect with the SMEs. So mentorship really works. So if we design programs, which have designed multiple ESD programs, if we integrate training, mentorship, and make it the center and the core of the development of an SME, we will see greater results. Capital, blended finance, grant, loan is quite important, right? And hence we need VCs in this country, some philanthropical, or we need to create financial instruments that talks to that particular market. We cannot use a blanket approach, which is quite common in South Africa. When we evaluate the credit of an individual, we use a blanket approach, and hence we need to change how we do things. Connection, ecosystem. We cannot operate in isolation. We have to understand that government has funding that is available. They've got programs that are available. And I'll talk a bit about it. The CIPC, for example, they've got what we call an IP program. And that IP program basically assists enterprises that wants to protect their IP and actually give them free incentives to do that. And therefore, if we begin to leverage on such opportunities and bring everything together, we will achieve the impact that we need. So the guiding principle, we move from a model of providing funding to one of an orchestrated ecosystem where partners exist, where we have multiple players that are coming on board so that we could be able to achieve the goal that we all are aligned to. And I think that it is quite important. We cannot leave intermediaries that operate within this environment behind. We have to bring them on board. And then we have to integrate them towards a solution that we want to build. So impact in action, it has been one of the most amazing 12 months of my life. I had come in from a very difficult situation in my own personal life. I had lost someone that was dear to me, and I joined Edge. And it gave me the reason, again, to be fueled back into action. I had lost my business a year before. I lost my wife the other year, which was last year, and I just joined Edge around July. And for me, it was the best decision that I took. It helped me to heal, but it made me to remember why I started what I started. And actually, who am I in the grand scheme of things? So I want to talk about this amazing case and multiple of them. This is Refilwe. She's from Royal Bafokeng in the Northwest. When she came in, she gave me a dream, although she was actually, trading. But she said, Sifiso, I want to have what we call a rural pharmacy. Help me. I didn't really think of it in another way. I didn't think of numbers. I didn't think of data. I didn't think of jobs. I thought about Refilwe. And what we have achieved with Refilwe is developing a full business plan, a business case for Mbotsaneng, the first rural pharmacy. And to date, through the ecosystem, I've been able to link Refilwe up with a company called Kalapeng. And Kalapeng is rolling out about 100 pharmacies nationally. And they want to test a franchise model with Refilwe, which is basically, I think, something great because Refilwe, the risk has been mitigated. She doesn't come from a pharmacy space, but thus far, she has done absolutely great. I also want to talk about Mpora Mbate, very passionate, and this far, she's been talking about this dream called a waste management center. And this waste management center, she had already procured some land, and she's been saying to us, how do I build Sifiso? I said, do you have a vision and a visual vision of this thing? Because if there is no visual of it, we cannot sell it. And to date, I said to Mpompo, let's look at your partner, EnviroCycle. Are they interested to have permanency here in the Northwest? although they have a small office. Can they jump on board as your partners and co-invest in this opportunity? And we are putting a case for her. But for me, I adopted also another strategy, a customer acquisition strategy, to say we need to tell the story. We can't tell the story through a business plan or data. This gentleman was actually, what we call an entrepreneur that was hustling, and he's been doing a whole lot of work. This gentleman has now built, within the same plot where he resides, where his family resides, he's just built a fabrication factory where he supply actually the mines with safety gears. But the great thing is that he wasn't aware that he was actually a scientist. And he was able to develop 2 products that now he's getting into the CIPC IP program, where these solutions will actually be protected. And he has most recently, through the very same solution, gotten a contract with Sibanye to actually scale nationally with them. And therefore, he's got 2 important products, and those products are for safety and also for a dolomite, the stuff that they use for blasting. And he's been doing quite well. And he's actually a beneficiary of some of the funding that is available, that is made available by government, where the current factory that is currently actually finalizing has been funded with about 500,000 rand, and he's going to be using that money to actually put machinery. So he has put his own investment, but we have leveraged on what government actually has to offer, and now he's got a fully fledged operational factory right in the rural environment of Phokeng. And these are the stories that, for me, resonate with me quite well. Another one is Dialects, but one of the most interesting things that I've seen with Dialects is that they've got what we call a soul-to-go product, and this product prevents rust. They are the only one that does that in South Africa. This is an import replacement product. No one can compete with them via price. We are building a franchise model for them to create independent agents that will exist in the coastal areas to provide a service within businesses and actually car washes and any property companies to provide the services to spray all these spaces where there's aluminum and all that stuff. So we are actually in the process of finalizing that franchise model with them. And outside of that, they continuously thrive in their own environment. They've also acquired a bit of money, about 17 million from the Black Industrial Fund. They are looking for a core investor and a funder. But the beauty about them is that money, they want to create a pyrolysis plant that will be stationed in both Durban and actually Phokeng, because they have received a contract from the South African Petroleum Company to supply about 2 million liters of diesel. And they need a pyrolysis plant so that they can convert a stockpile of tires and convert it to green diesel. So we are currently working with them on that funding. And with R900bn, we continuously, look at other opportunities. Most recently is the Sasol deal that he got, and also the Astron deal that he got, where he needs to collect about 1.3 million liters of oil. And that has been achieved by providing tools that will help them to be able to better acquire a customer. This is an interesting one. This entrepreneur, we've been helping him for the longest time. But because we need to be patient when we are supporting these SMEs, he runs an engineering business, but he's quite invested in the taxi industry. And if we look at legislation currently, your Ubers and your Bolt, these guys are not required. Actually, they are not required. In terms of the Transport Act, and Uber and e-hailing, and if you are actually transporting any passengers, you need a permit. The Uber guys and the Bolt guys, they don't have a permit. And hence you see the qualm that is happening between the taxi industry and the e-hailing guys to say, why are you subjecting us to permits while these guys, you are not subjecting them to permits? But I said to him, let's rather look at the opportunity. What then, once they start to be looking for permits and they are actually forced to be looking for permits? We then came up with an e-hailing solution, because he sits with all these structures and big structures of the taxi industry to say, let's create a replacement in the meantime. And we're calling it smart taxi. So we are planning to work on that e-hailing app that integrates an ecosystem of both your small combis that you see, they call them amapela in the townships, and even big minibuses, long distances, and we've kind of built this solution with him. Currently, we are talking to the guys that have developed such a system. They call themselves TRIMS, and we have said to them, let's just plug and play into the solution. And that's what we are doing with him. Here are the immediate opportunities, and these are my last slide. Please bear with me. I want to talk about mega projects. I want to talk about what we see in the township as a trend now. You go to River Sands in Fourways, there's a big township project there that is happening. Flare Off, Mohlakeng, Legaye, and all these are developments where they're not going to be more than 2,000 households there. If you look at opportunities to invest in terms of businesses, and if you are looking to scale businesses, look at these new developments, because that's where new townships are emerging, and that's where new opportunities are emerging. And these are some of the businesses that also are scaling up informally. They actually are creating a franchise model, but they don't have the tools, and that's where the opportunities is. There are businesses in the township that can scale, that have mastered their model, but they don't have the tools to franchise. And these are some of them. And therefore, some of the intervention is to really focus on those things to help them be able to be franchisable. This is the new project. I'm also working on this project. It's in Mthatha. It's a communal land that has been owned by the Department of Land Affairs. It's about 6,000 hectares of land, and we'll actually be developing it and looking for part investors. But this will exist within a rural environment where we are actually bringing in a big mega project within an environment like Mthatha. And you could imagine the opportunities that exist for businesses, for investors, and multiple stakeholders. And the government is involved because they are the ones that have given us a 100-year lease of the land. So this is the scale of the project, and housing development, smart infrastructure, public collaboration, those are the things that will currently be happening. So I've been working in this. I've been actually traveling to the Eastern Cape a lot to actually see how can I be able to assist and help them scale this project and fund capital. The last one is Apiwe. She is a voice of craft beer in South Africa. I serve as a strategic advisor to his business. We just currently received about 10 million rand from the Mining Investment Corporation. We are actually scaling the business. He's got a lot of export opportunities in Germany, in UK. And what we've been doing is to make sure that we actually use that money, which is part grant, most of it, and with an equity stake of about 30%. And we are actually helping her to scale. These are the products that she's actually selling. Recently, we had a meeting with the South African breweries, where we know that they don't have a cider within their portfolio. And we wanted them to acquire a proportion of the cider and use that money as core investment capital to the scale up of Apiwe. The conversation hasn't really gone how we wanted it, but Apiwe continues to break all boundaries, and we kind of share similar stories in terms of the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. Here I'm just highlighting what is out there, within the environment of the township, and what are the innovations that are out there. And these innovations, some of them I'm actively participating, either as an advisor or as a person that have business interest in them. I won't go to them quickly because of time, but here's what I wanted to talk about. The soul in data. First of all, we have to have a soul of intentionality. We build data and we go and create things that are already needed. One of the things that excite me about the Royal Bafokeng and what I've been exposed to is their 2035 plan. because there is a goal. We are all working with intention of one common goal to get the outcome of the goal. And I think once that has been set as an intention, it is easy for us to rally towards it. A soul of intermediation. Intermediaries are a very important tool for the development of any economies. And they are the ones that are able to connect the dots, that understand the ecosystem, and that understand the policies. The soul of partnership, from government to private money and to collaboration with multiple stakeholders, will help us to work. So in my conclusion, I said impact is not an event, it is a relationship. And we have to make sure that we solidify this relationship if we ought to see the impact and the success that we need. With that said, I thank you for giving me your time, and thank you so much.